Franklin Williams. This is Franklin Williams, who is convicted of multiple felonies, including armed robberies and fleeing police in Cleveland, Ohio. President: Mr. Williams, listen to me, I'm gonna gag you in 1 second. Williams conducted 3 armed robberies. Before leading police on a high-speed chase, he was later arrested and convicted. Now at his sentencing, Williams would not stop talking. Despite more than a dozen warnings from the judge that means zip it right now. Does that make sense? No, it does. Here we go. This resulted in the judge ordering Williams' mouth to be taped shut. That's what it is. At a following court appearance, Williams has something to share with the judge and cameras: freedom of speech. No duct tape with the hashtag. Aside from all the interruptions, the judge can hand down Williams' sentence. You face the potential maximum consecutive sentence of 134 years. I ordered for 24-year sentence after Williams received a 24-year prison sentence. The judge later apologized for the duct tape and threw out that sentence. He then appointed a new judge, where she sentenced him to 33 years behind bars. This is Martez Abram, who is convicted on Martez Abram 2 counts of murder for the killings of 2 Walmart employees in South Haven, Mississippi. Abram had worked at the Walmart but was faced with a suspension after he apparently had a knife on him in the store. The day he was suspended, he returned to the store with multiple weapons and opened fire, killing store managers Anthony Brown and Brandon Gale's music. He also shot an officer who survived due to his bulletproof vest music. He was arrested on site, now in court. Abram admits to all crimes. Look at it. Yes, Mr. Gale is on the floor going down at this point. Is auntie? Yes. As you re-shooting him, right? Yes. Look at the screen, sir. Yes. That you shooting him? Yes. Can you admit that you shot him, Nicole? Yes. You shot him again, didn't you? Yes. After that you went back to the toilet paper already? Yes. This is one of the victim's wife delivering a victim impact statement. It took 20 years. Earlier that we had our first date. And now this is when the judge will decide Abram's fate in count 1. I will send it to you to death, count 2. You will be sentenced to death in count 3. You will be sentenced to life in the penitentiary. As Abram hears that he will be receiving the death penalty, he stands silently where he now sits on death row awaiting his execution. Erica Butts and Shanita Cunningham. This is Erica Butts and Shanita Cunningham. They were both charged with homicide by child abuse in Somerville, South Carolina. But who was best friends with the child's mother was supposed to be caring for the toddler for 2 weeks. The child was only 3 years old. She died from her injuries, reflecting weeks of torture, a time frame that matched the time she had spent with Butts and her lover at the time, Cunningham. What must have been the excruciating sounds that came from that child is more than disconcerting to this form. After both women were found guilty, the judge now hands down their sentence. Need to be sentenced to the state Department of Corrections for a period of life. They were just sentenced to life in prison. Music. Butts and Cunningham are reportedly at separate prisons serving their life sentences. Keith Ferguson. This is Keith Ferguson from Kalkaska, Michigan. He was set to court for 12 felony counts, including kidnapping and murder. Value. OK. Ferguson, who was 40 at the time, was engaged in a divorce argument with his wife Tiffany Ferguson when he began to suddenly beat her, followed by fatally shooting her in front of their 4 children. He then hauled the children over to Tiffany's parents' house, where he fatally shot his father-in-law. After fleeing the scene, Ferguson stormed a nearby house, taking the owner hostage, and barricaded himself inside the home. After a 7-hour standoff, Ferguson was arrested, is already murdered, and murdered multiple people, and fled in his state passages. During Ferguson's court appearance, his attitude and remorse towards the situation baffled everyone. Can I get you to stand up there as a podium, please? Alright, I need to have you raise your right hand for me. Alright, okay, stop. At his sentencing, Tiffany's best friend gives a victim impact statement saying she always felt that Keith would hurt his wife. He loved his kids too much. He won't kill me. He loved them so much he murdered their mother and grandfather. When asked about his children, Ferguson never desired to see or speak to them again. Music. The judge responded by saying, you may not need the clinical definition of insanity, but it's really something fundamentally wrong with you. Ferguson was given a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Randall Moore. This is Randall Moore. He is facing 3 life sentences for crimes against his former wife. Teresa and Lynch. Lynch had left her husband and filed a protective order against him. This resulted in Moore kidnapping and killing his estranged wife. Officer Todd Rowland responded to the cries from the apartment where he was then shot and wounded. OK 303. Adam S. Been hit. Officer down. Suspects armed with 20 shelf. Advises nobody come to the door as he will shoot again shortly after. Moore had a phone call with a 911 dispatcher. Listened as he explains his motives. I didn't want to do any of this, okay? But I am telling you all I wanted was my son. I just wanted to see my 7-month-old baby. That's all I cared about. Not long after Moore surrendered, and for Officer Rowland, he underwent surgery for his hand. As the verdict is read out, Moore gives nothing but a slight nod. Leader jury find the defendant guilty of murder in the first degree. We the jury find the defendant guilty of kidnapping in the first degree, guilty of sexual abuse in the first degree, guilty of attempt to commit murder. At Moore sentencing, Lynch's mother gives a victim impact statement. He did to my daughter, Teresa and Marie Lynch, was evil, hateful, and despicable. You are now dead and rotting and repulsive to me. Read the journal she wrote. She hated you, you real loser. Moore refused to apologize for his action, saying he had no remorse for what happened, and I'll tell you point blank, I have not 1 ounce of remorse for Tristan's death. Could have all been prevented. All you had to do is let me see my kid. Now you're never going to see her again. But now comes the judge. If anybody did you and know what a piece of work you were before you start talking, they know it or not. The court doesn't allow me to punish you any more than I'm doing now. If I could, I would. Moore was given a total of 3 life sentences plus 25 years for the attempted murder. This is David Ranter. He spent 22 years, David Ranter, behind bars for a murder he did not commit in Brooklyn, New York. Ranter was arrested by Detective Louis Garcella. Ranter was put in a police lineup run by Scarcella and was identified as the shooter. But decades later, reportedly, the key witness revealed that the detective had provided him with a description of whom to pick in the lineup. There was no physical evidence linking Ranter to the killing, and the evidence presented to the jury was allegedly fabricated. Ranter was then convicted and sentenced to 37.5 years to life in prison. But after spending over 2 decades in prison, the former witnesses admitted that they were pressured into testifying against Ranter, and now this is the moment his conviction gets thrown out. Mr. Brenda, to say that I'm sorry for what you have endured would be an understatement and grossly inadequate. But I say it to you anyway. The defendant's motion to vacate the judgment of conviction is granted. Applause. After his handcuffs were removed, he hugged his family with all he owned thrown over his back. He walks out a free man after his release. He reportedly received $2 million from the state and a $6.4 million settlement from the city of New York. Diana Lovejoy. This is Diana Lovejoy. She used to be married to Greg Mulvey-Hill, living in Carlsbad, California. But soon their marriage fell apart and they divorced. After a messy divorce and lots of legal trouble, it ended with a court ordering Diana to pay $120,000 to Greg for his stake in their family house. The court also ordered that she must share the custody of their son. Diana became furious about hearing the court orders, so she planned to kill her ex-husband by teaming up with her boyfriend. Weldon McDavid. Greg was shot in the torso, but luckily the bullet did hit his heart and he survived. Both McDavid and Diana conspired to murder, and the court has sufficient evidence against them. It's so painful that some people in this world seem to think that I would have an interview to do this. Interestingly, she fainted in court. She lowered her head down toward the defense table for a few seconds. Verdict. We the jury find the defendant Diana Jean Lovejoy guilty of the crime of attempted murder of Greg Mulvihill and Wright. When you hear guilty, you hear a thud. Guilty of the crime of conspiracy to commit murder. It silenced the courtroom. Aside from hearing her family cry in the background music break, she then is brought onto the floor, and when medics bring her out, she still appears to be passed out. But doctors later found out she had only fainted. Weldon McDavid received 50 years to life in prison because he was the one that pulled the trigger, and Diana was sentenced to 26 years to life in prison. Foreign base Webb, who has been charged with 2 counts of attempted murder in Lexington, Kentucky. You can see on the security camera Webb tries to run over to employees at a jail. He recently served time at his first court appearance. The judge is about to remove herself from the trial because she knew the two employees, and now Webb is about to shock the courtroom. Spit on the judge. The judge wipes the spit off and then kicks him out of the courtroom. Turns out, Webb has a very dark past. When he was behind bars, he was charged for the murder of 2 different girlfriends. He was found guilty of the killing of the first girlfriend. Now he is on trial for the second. Webb showed up to court with a tattoo on his head that listed people he wanted to kill. At the bottom was 3 rats crossed out during the trial. Webb showed no remorse, and the jury found him guilty. The judge sentenced Webb to life in prison for his crimes. This is Camilla Gamet, who is charged with the murder of her boyfriend in Jackson, Mississippi. Reportedly, the attack happened during an argument between the 2 individuals and ended with a boyfriend being violently stabbed to death. Gamet was arrested on first-degree murder charges in court. Gamet would claim her murder was in self-defense and her boyfriend was attacking her, but in the end she was found guilty of murder the way I was portrayed. Everything was lies. There was a little bit of truth, but mostly I was convicted of the lies. We now move into the sentencing, where Gamet reportedly kept interrupting the judge. "You re-gone, nah, shut your mouth," with Gamet showing no remorse. The judge had some final words. You stab dad. I agree with the family. I hope you die in prison as well. You know, if this was a death penalty state, you'd be getting a chair in the end. Gamet was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. This is Scott Nelson, who is facing first-degree murder charges after killing a nanny in Orlando, Florida. So you committed the worst possible crime. Nelson was recently released from a 25-year prison sentence for a bank robbery. After he was let go from his painting job, he decided to plan another robbery. Nelson broke into a house with a knife where a nanny was working as a caregiver. He kidnapped her, threw her in the trunk, and drove to a local ATM so he could withdraw cash. Nelson then drove to a remote location and stabbed her to death before ditching her body and the car, where he was later arrested on trial. Nelson argued that the government was to blame. "You bought Zipcar." "Yes, I did." "You bought that DB." "Correct, you bought it." "I sure did. I bought that material because I had a plan in mind of how I was going to survive being thrown on the street again for what, the 3rd or was it the 4th time by the government. And you know, you kick a dog enough times, they tend to bite back, and really they just don't care anymore. Nelson continues testifying, show no emotion, and finally admits to the murder. Somebody was going to pay for how you've been treated. That is very accurate. Who killed Jennifer Fulford? I did. He took the stand during the penalty phase, and this is what he had to say. How has your mental health been affected by your previous incarceration? I am a homicidal maniac in the end. Nelson was found guilty of first-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison. This is John Bunn. He spent 27 years. John Bunn, wrongfully convicted of murder, and I have always been an innocent man while living in Brooklyn, New York. Bunn was only 14 years old when he was arrested by NYPD Detective Louis Garcella. Bunn later spent 16 years behind bars at an 11 years out on parole, where he still fought to prove his innocence. Then finally his conviction was overturned based on the wrongdoing of Detective Scarcella and the fact that there wasn't even probable cause to arrest Bunn in the first place ahead of wrong man in prison, and after 27 years of fighting to clear his name, he is finally exonerated. The 27 years I've been fighting for my life. But before he leaves the courtroom, he has a moment with the judge. He filed a lawsuit against the city of New York and Detective Scarcella. This is Alan McCarty, who was arrested, and charged after making death threats to a judge in a child custody case. Judge ruled against McCarty and took away his children. His erratic behavior towards the judge continued into his court appearances. Music. Me and act like that he win it. Shut the underscore up. I'm trying to think over here. After McCarty was found guilty for the original threats made to a judge, we now move on to the sentencing. Stupid piece. You threatened my life. Music. Laughter. Back room. No, I am not saying not resistance. I am not resistant. I am just not stand up. I am not standing. I don't have a stand. McCarty is moved to another room to watch the court through a one-way glass, and he continues on making a disturbance. McCarty was sentenced to 20 years in prison. The judge also issued an additional 10-day Sentence due to his actions in the courtroom. This is Marquith Lloyd, who is convicted Marquith Lloyd of murdering a police officer in Orlando, Florida. Music was already on the run from the police. After he killed his former girlfriend who was pregnant with his child a month later, Lloyd is spotted in a Walmart. You can see him walking in moments later. Orlando Police Lieutenant Deborah Clayton pulls in. You can see her grab a cart and walk in. Reportedly they cross paths every few minutes outside the store. Lieutenant Clayton was notified and she tried to stop and arrest Lloyd when a shootout begun. Lieutenant Clayton was killed during the interaction, being shot 4 times following the murder. Louis took off again, which led to a 9-day manhunt, where he was later found during the arrest. He tried to escape, where he lost his left eye in the altercation here in court. Lloyd took the stand. Reportedly, he believed everyone was out to kill him, just reacting there. I was just reacting even when they opened the door. I just reacted. I fired too, so I just react. The jury then found him guilty. This is Lieutenant Clayton's sister giving a victim impact statement. She stood in the place at S. My mother, when I didn't have one. I truly miss my sister. I truly miss her, and this is the moment that Lloyd hears that the jury unanimously recommends the death sentence. We, the jury, unanimously find that the defendant Marquith Lloyd should be sentenced to death. Lloyd seems to mouth something out to the public a few moments later. Lloyd has an outburst. All right, why do we remove Mr. Lloyd from the courtroom? The judge later agreed with the jury and sent Louis to death, where he now sits behind bars waiting for his death sentence. This is Darrell Brooks, who is convicted of killing 6 people and injuring dozens of others after he drove his SUV into a Christmas parade in Waukesha, Wisconsin. Reportedly, during his reckless driving, he reached speeds of over 30 miles per hour, and the prosecution argued that his driving rampage was intentional. He plowed through 68 different people. He kept going until he got to the end, and there was no more bodies to hit. It was intentional. After Brooks was arrested and charged, Brooks decided to represent himself in court. If you are allowed to represent yourself in this case, sir, you will not have attorneys assisting you. They are gone from this case. Do you understand? That I think I will probably be better served representing myself throughout the trial. Brooks was removed multiple times for constant interruptions and outbursts. It was here that his real personality was shown when he starts to laugh during a witness testimony. He told Erica that he was gonna find her and he's gonna kill her. Now back in the courtroom, Brooks has an outburst as he didn't like how the district attorney pronounced the word defendant. And now Brooks is clearly frustrated. He decides to have the stare down with the judge. I need to take a break. This man right now is having a stare down with me. It's a very disrespectful. He pounded his fist. Frankly, it makes me scared. The jury quickly found Brooks guilty of all 76 charges against him, and he was given 6 life sentences, plus more than 700 additional years in prison. Jaleel Smith Riley. This is Julia Smith Riley in a Cincinnati, Ohio courtroom, who police say confessed to a robbery, killing a 20-year-old woman and seriously wounding her boyfriend. Portia Brooks was in her car with her boyfriend, Aaron Martin, when Smith Riley came up to her car with 2 others looking to rob them. When Smith Riley found out Martin didn't have any cash, he was shot in the head, leaving him with permanent brain damage. Smith Riley then shot at Brooks, which killed her 3 days later. Lord music. This is somebody that feels genuine remorse. This is somebody that thinks about this every day, and he knows it. He can't go back in time and undo what he did now. Portia Brooks' mother delivers a victim impact statement. But he killed me mentally, emotionally. He killed my identity as a mother of 3, as a family of 4. This is now Brooks' sister speaking. I have to deal with life without portions. So he should deal with life, could help without parole. This is moments right before Jaleel Smith Riley gets the news that he will never be allowed to return home again and ensure a term of life without parole account for the offense of attempted murder. Applause. Michael Brady. This is Michael Brady, who attempted a prison escape that resulted in the death of 4 prison workers at Pasco Tank Correctional Institution in North Carolina. I stabbed him like 4 to 8 times to hit Jeffrey Howe, until he stopped moving. I don't know how many times. I hit him with a hammer. Brady was facing 24 years in prison for an attempted murder conviction after he shot at a North Carolina state trooper, and 4 years into his sentence, Brady and 3 other inmates brutally murdered 4 prison workers with hammers and scissors. That man Michael Brady beat that man George like he was trying to bust concrete. Brady then tried to hop a fence, but then was captured at gunpoint. It was like a bloodbath. I stepped in between Jeffrey and Wendy and slid trying to get in because the whole elevator floor was nothing but blood during the trial. The prosecutors argued that he was the one who planned the attack and had no remorse for the killings. We know who originated the plan. Mr. Brady is found guilty. He now takes the stand at his sentencing. You can ask me anything you want. I'm gone. Nah, tell the truth, whether it hurts me, whether it helps me. I don't care about that. If you don't believe you crazy, I don't think. I am crazy now, and you do know the difference between right and wrong, yes. So you know. Murder is wrong. Murder is a different name for a death. But yes, your freedom meant more than their lives. And now the judge reads out the jury's recommendation. You're unanimously recommending that the defendant be sentenced to death. Brady seems completely emotionless, and the judge later agrees on the death penalty, where he now sits locked up in Colorado, awaiting his death sentence. Ronnie O'Neal, murdered suspect in Riverview, Florida. O'Neal was 29 when he fatally shot his then-girlfriend, Kenyatta Barron. Following this, he murdered their own daughter by striking her multiple times with a hatchet. She was only 9 years old. O'Neal also stabbed their 8-year-old son before pouring gasoline all over the house and setting it on fire. O'Neal was arrested upon fleeing the burning house. The son was able to escape but was critically wounded and suffered from burns. The first 911 call on the incident was from the girlfriend, who was heard screaming before suddenly hanging up. 8 minutes later, another call came in from O'Neal. Kiki, her name is Kiki, and she tried to kill me. After the arrest, O'Neal was psychologically cleared to represent himself in court during the trial. He cross-examined his now 11-year-old son, who he stabbed, to which the son explained everything that happened. It's good to see you, man. Did I hurt you that night of this incident? Yes, I did. And how did I hurt you? Tried, and he didn't deserve this. An FBI investigation concluded that the police did not use excessive force, and that Carpio's injuries were sustained due to his jump from the 3rd floor of a building, and struggled with the law enforcement every day. I face the facts of what I did. Thank you. He was sentenced to life in prison with parole. Callum Fidner. This is Callum Fidner in Bradford Crown Court in the UK. He's here to help support his 17-year-old friend who is currently on the other side of this door. Tried, and he didn't deserve this. An FBI investigation concluded that the police did not use excessive force, and that Carpio's injuries were sustained due to his jump from the 3rd floor of a building, and struggled with the law enforcement every day. I face the facts of what I did. Thank you. He was sentenced to life in prison with parole. Callum Fidner. This is Callum Fidner in Bradford Crown Court in the UK. He's here to help support his 17-year-old friend who is currently on the other side of this door.